John
How you doing,
Lucas.
buddy?
Good, man. How are
Oh,
you?
I'm all right. Oh, it's weird. I'm backwards on here.
Are you backwards?
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No, that's
Well,
okay.
not to worry. Hey, everybody, we're jumping in here a little bit. We were running a little late from the last panel, but thank you very much for joining us. Welcome back to Comic Card Live. And this is our final panel of the day, and it's going to be a fun one because this guy, not only is he one of my good friends, I've known him forever. He is one of the funniest, most handsome,
No pressure.
most talented. No, I'm not going to pile it on too deep, but John Lucas, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, John.
You spooked me when you said I was funny.
Yeah, you got to be funny. No pressure. Yeah. Be funny.
Yeah.
But John, of course, you've seen his work on books like Deadpool. He's currently doing something very, very cool, which I want to talk to him about here a little bit later in the show. And you may actually get to see some of it as well if you guys are Edgar Rice Burroughs fans. But we've seen John on several different books. You've worked as both a penciler, as an inker, and you've been working for, I'm trying to think of how many years, because I'm trying to think of how far back we first got to know each other. What was your first published comic work?
You and I first met was at a Larry Con, right? Like a Bulldog.
Yeah, it was a Dallas Fantasy Fair.
Yeah, I was doing self-publishing with people, and I was drawing stuff for like Caliber and what was the company and Mojo Press.
Yeah,
that type of stuff. But
wait, was Mojo Press? That was our buddy Mark Finn, right? Mojo Press was our buddy Mark Finn, right?
No, that was Rick Claw.
Oh, I'm sorry, Rick Claw. Okay, and Mark Finn's was.
We did Absolute together.
That's it.
Yeah.
So very, very cool.
Yeah, he wrote Punk, and Bill Haney did Shot Loose. Those were the Absolute books. Yeah, and I drew one of the Punks.
We've got one of our I guess another longtime guy that we've known forever, Brian Tidwell, in the chat. Hey, Brian, thanks for joining us.
We're Facebook friends, I think.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, you definitely know Brian. So yeah, I was trying to think back because I think Shot Loose might have been around the time when we met, because that sounds really familiar. Yeah. What was your first published work?
It was in an issue of Magazine for Antarctic Press. I drew a Viking ghost ship story. I think we got paid $15 a page for it. I mean, we got like a lump, and then we divvied it all up between us, and we got about $15 a page.
Yeah. So. Now, John is a Texas boy, but he's currently living in Arkansas. Yeah. What prompted the move to Arkansas?
Well, we were living in New York, and it's so expensive there. And Mindy, my wife, she's a special education teacher, and her family is in Arkansas, and her mother works in a related field. So she just felt like it was the best avenue for her to find a job. And since I can theoretically do what I do anywhere, it was, I didn't have much of a vote.
Well, and
not to disparage Arkansas, it's just as good as any other place.
Well, and the beauty part about Arkansas is that you guys are a hop, skip, and a jump away from Texas. Like, you could come back here in a couple hours, so it's nice.
Sure. I'm not sure if that's a feature or a flaw, but no, my mother and sisters are still in Texas, so
yeah,
I hop back and visit every now and then.
I loved the work that you did on Deadpool, but I'm most curious about the stuff that you're working on right now, which you kind of teased me with when we were talking about you coming on here. Do you want to talk a little bit about the Burroughs stuff?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I'm working on that I can talk about is I've been doing a strip for going on, about 2 years now for the Burroughs. They have an online subscription service they have strips, like a once a week Sunday comic strips adapting Edgar Rice Burroughs' books. And I've been working, I'm about 5 episodes shy of completing an adaptation of Beyond the Farthest Star, which is one of his lesser known and unfinished books. He finished the first volume, and then I think Philip Jose Farmer wrote a sequel to it. Other people have picked it up, and so we did I think the Beyond the Farthest Star was about the first 50 episodes, and the second 50 episodes is the Philip Jose Farmer.
I remember you showing me some of this stuff when we were at GeekCon. What was it? It wasn't
Is that the
last
one
year.
in Shreveport?
Yeah, the one in Shreveport. Yeah, I remember you showing me some of that stuff, and I remember we were talking about how it was so cool to be involved in something that was someone that was so considered to be such an amazing talent and so important to this industry and whatnot. And that's definitely kind of one of those like lifetime achievement legacy things. Like so congrats, man. It's
Oh, well,
great.
thanks, man.
Yeah.
I'm kind of, because the thing is backwards. I'm looking at the camera, but it looks like I'm looking away. I look like I'm in like a 90s band where I'm looking off camera.
We're looking at
There
the mirror
Now I'm
universe.
centered, and okay, now I'm looking at the camera. I kept seeing myself, and I was kind of distracted by the fact that I was doing that. It was bothering me, so I'm a little straight.
We're looking at the mirror universe, John.
Yeah. And well, like that, I already have the Van Dyke, so. Yeah.
I'm curious because you've worked on a lot of like independent projects, and like we were talking about some of the small press books that you worked on back in the '90s. Books like Shot Loose and things like that, and working for Claw. And
yeah, that may have even been the Shot Loose and Punk. I mean, let's talk about books that nobody's ever heard of. Yeah, that may have been late '80s actually. And then I was living in Austin at the time, and I hooked up with the Shannon Wheeler and all those guys, the Too Much Coffee Man guys, and did something for Jab. I'm in one of the last issues of Jab. That was sort of like a weird knock against me for the longest time, that I was a book killer, because I would come on and I would do something that would be like the last issue of something. People would joke with me about that, and I finally had to tell them to stop doing it because people might start taking it seriously.
This is a
total. So I'm reviving it now by mentioning it.
This is a totally inside baseball question, but were you at the show? I want to say it was in like 1990, and they had it in Waco in like what used to be, it was like a bar that had gotten shut down, and they set up like all the tables around the bar. Is this ringing any bells?
No, I don't think I've ever heard that. When I was in Austin by then, and I think it was weird. Like the first couple of years that I lived in Austin, I didn't draw at all. I got totally sucked into the whole Austin life of, I don't know how. I mean, it's the 21st century, smoking dope and going to rock and roll shows, and just being a 20-something-year-old dude. Yeah,
and there was none of that going on at the Dallas Fantasy Fair.
Oh.
I'm surprised I remember those days, to be honest with you. So
yeah, well, those there was more drinking going on at those, I think, and I was never a drinker, so yeah. Well, I wound up being the babysitter for a lot of people at those shows because I didn't drink, and so all of these like fresh green nerds would drop off of the the pod and drink until they were puking in trash cans, and so I wound up holding a bunch of nerds' ponytails.
Yeah. What I was getting at though with the indie stuff was that when you're working on comics like that, and then you switch and you do something like Civil War Frontline or something that's like a big book for a big company, like what are some of the pluses and minuses of being able to work on like a smaller independent thing versus like a big corporate company thing?
Well, I mean, I guess whenever you're doing it for yourself, you're doing it that it's the hunger of wanting to do it, and it's also you're coming home from your crappy day job, and your work is your catharsis. And then once you make that shift to doing it full time, it's you no longer have that job to come home and work your artwork out with. You have to find the motivation to do it every day without that prompt. That I mean, not that you don't maintain some sort of hunger to keep doing it. But you're no longer trying to escape something. You're there, you're in it, and that becomes, in a sense, your crappy job. And yeah, so just the self-discipline to sit down and make yourself do it all the time, because it's easy to come home from, I didn't have the crappiest job in the world. I was a buyer at an indie record store. So, I mean, that had its perks, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. And so I would come home, and it's easy to come home and work 2-3 hours after working a register and ordering records and having to deal with retail, just to pour everything that you have into like your comic pages there, and at this point, you're either doing, indie stuff with guys that, or, I was doing strips for the Austin newspaper and their Thursday supplement. And so it was my stuff. And then you shift gears and you're getting a script from someone you've never met on a project that, you want to do it, but it's not coming from here, It's becoming professional. It's finding that motivation to sit down and do it because you have to, not because you want to.
Are there still, though, like some geek out moments, like when you get to work with someone like, say, Howard Chaykin, when you're doing Forever Maelstrom? Like, was there a moment where you were kind of like, I'm getting to work with Howard Chaykin? Like, do you have those kinds of moments?
Well, there are always those breakthrough moments that, it's first time published, or first time self-published, first time published, somebody actually pays you something, and then first time drawing something for a big publisher, and then if you actually get to work on a character that you love, that you mentioned, you brought up Burroughs and how important he is to certainly nerds of our age and older. I don't know if people younger than us have that love for him that we do, but Robert E. Howard's the other one. I got into comics through Conan.
Yeah.
And so I got to work on Conan, and I was inking. So, not that doesn't count, but, I didn't get to draw it, but I'm still, holy crap, I'm a part of this now. And this story of Conan in comics, I'm a little footnote. And so when I did that, and, I finally got to work for Mad Magazine for, I killed him. But, that was like a super nerd box ticked, because even before Conan, you go to the grocery store with your mom when you're a kid, and when you and I were kids, the magazine rack, there were Mad Magazine and Cracked Magazine and Famous Monsters of Filmland, all that. But Mad Magazine was really the first comics that I read, that and Cracked. So to get to do something for Mad Magazine was huge. And then the other thing that I was obsessed with when I was a kid was Kiss. And so I got to draw a cover for Kiss magazine, for a Kiss comic.
Mm-hmm.
So that was another, that was huge nerd, accomplishment. And I finally made money off of Uncle Gene. So
yeah, just the idea that, like, from now moving forward in history, there's going to be books, like encyclopedic, like books about Conan or Batman or certain characters that you're going to be in there.
Yeah,
and
whether they like it or not, I'm in there.
That's amazing. Yeah. It's an amazing thing. Really feels like there's an accomplishment there. So, John, can you indulge us a little bit? Can we get to watch some of your process and see you, like, kind of inking and doing what you do? Is that possible? Do you have a way to do that?
Uh-huh.
Okay. I can't wait.
Here. I don't do anything digitally. Not that I'm knocking digital. It's just that I'm a Luddite. I'm not any good at it. So you're going to have to trust me, or kind of tell me whether you can see it well. It's in shadow.
Oh, yeah.
Now. So
yeah, perfect. That's perfect.
There. Okay. I've got my inkwell over here, and this is episode 96, I think, of Edgar Rice Burroughs' Beyond the Farthest Star. Let me see what's in panel. I'll try and ink that first.
And I just made you full screen, so now it's just all you. Now,
okay.
Can you, just to kind of get started, what kind of inks do you use, and what kind of brushes are you got going on there?
Well, I've got a Raphael 8404.
Okay.
This is a size number 2. I'll use either a 2 or a 3, depending on what. There are no art supply stores in Fayetteville, Arkansas, so I order everything from Dick Blick, and depending on whether or not Dick Blick has a 2 or a 3, and I'll order those. I'm using Dr. Martin's ink. I think that's what I have. But I'll buy like the giant bottles of Speedball and refill my my bottle. So it may be Speedball. I may be lying to you. It may not be Dr. Martin's.
Yeah.
And then I'm just working on, I how I've been working on these to sort of save effort and time. I've been doing my thumbnails smaller on. It's a different strip, but I do my thumbnails here and I do them pretty tight, and I'll take them, I'll scan them into the computer, and in Photoshop, I'll drop them onto the template for the board and move everything around how I had it printed out in blue, and then I tighten up the pencils with where is it? With my mechanical pencil.
Mm-hmm.
So, and now I'm going to start slapping ink on it.
Cool.
So, yeah, I haven't inked today, so I may be a little.
Well, hopefully this is not too much pressure.
Is that in the frame? No, that's not in the frame, is it?
Okay, now it is. Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
And like, what is the length of process here? Like from going from thumbnails to board to inks to finished. Like, how long would you say it takes you on a one strip?
The strips go a lot faster. And I'll typically, like on this batch, I have 3 pages that are loosely penciled, and before I start inking, and I laid 3 of them out and printed them out and started tightening pencils all in one day. But I'm typically much slower than that. Like there's a project that I'm working on right now that unfortunately hasn't been announced yet, so I can't really talk about it. And that process is much, much longer. It's a thing that I'm writing and drawing, and God, it takes me forever to do those. My publisher will attest to that.
Do you miss, ever since we've kind of been under the whole coronavirus thing, not being able to go like to a convention, or not being able to even, go and hang out in the store the way that you used to and talk to people in the comic shop and things like that? Is that kind of like weighing on you a lot? Because I know it's really kind of messed with me a bit. I mean, I'm getting past it, but it's just weird not being able to go out there and socialize with people the way that we used to.
Yeah, well, one of my favorite shows just came and, or it would have. I almost said came and went, but it didn't. The date of the show that I really like just came and went. It's called Air Capital in Wichita.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the Kansas City guys who I'm friends with, they go to that show. And yeah, that's one that even my wife will set up. My wife knits and does stuff like that, and they give her a table. And we've made friends with the promoters, and a lot of artists that I'm good friends with from this region go there. So yeah, that was kind of a bummer to miss that one. There's a Memphis show that I like a lot that I do that got canceled this year, Memphis Comic Expo. And yeah, it's weird because I'm kind of along with being a Luddite, I'm also a misanthrope. But there's a difference between not going out because you don't want to and not being able to go out because you can't. So not even having the option of doing it kind of irks me. But it's not that huge of a difference, I guess, other than the psychological.
Yeah. David Dingman in the chat says hi.
Hey.
Rocky Parsons says, "Dang, I love Air Capital Con." So he's totally with you on that.
Yeah, it's a great show, and hi to Dave too.
Yeah. Very, very cool. Now, these strips that you do, how many would you say you've done to date?
Well, this is 96, so I've done 95 of them, and it's going to 100.
Wow.
So I'll be done next month, probably.
Yeah. That's quite a legacy, man.
Yeah. I mean, it's I guess so, and I think there's some talk of them. The Burroughs estate is who's doing this, and they've been hunting for a publisher to collect them. So hopefully they'll find someone. I think there's a publisher that's even doing Burroughs comics, so you'd think that would be a natural fit, but I don't know. I'm just a hired gun, so I don't know about all the business specifics.
I'm kind of curious. We talked a little bit earlier about you've worked on Deadpool. At the time when you worked on that book, it wasn't quite in the big explosion popularity that it is now. Most of that's a lot due to the movies and everything. But when you were working on that character, because it was such a fan favorite character, did it seem like there was like, you know, certain, not, I don't want to say criticisms, but maybe expectations of like when you draw a character like that, or there's certain expectations that come with that like you have to live up to like what the fan perception of the character is, or
that was certainly my experience, because I had some people track me down on like an old blog that I hadn't even used in a couple of years to tell me how much they hated my Deadpool. So yeah, I'd say that there's an expectation that people have.
Yeah.
No. But you know, the haters are always the loudest. I mean, I meet people at shows all the time that tell me that they love my Deadpool. Maybe it's just because they're standing right in front of me in Wichita, Kansas, and I'm as good as they're going to get. But yeah, I mean, I run into people at shows who tell me they like it, but they don't. I guess they don't contact editors and tell them, and you know, they don't really reach out to me unless they see me at a show. So.
It's like you say, man, the angriest voices tend to be the loudest, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
But I thought,
honestly, how often do you read? Well, it's kind of your gig with your review stuff. It's kind of your gig to talk about how much you like stuff, but your average person, they don't really crow about the stuff that they love so much. People, I think, as a general rule, prefer to complain about things.
Yeah. I loved your work on Deadpool. I thought you did a great job on that book.
Oh, well, thank you. I thank you. It was interesting. I had never read the character. I knew who he was, but I mean, it was interesting. What I liked about it is probably because my roots are so deep into things like Mad and Cracked Magazine. I like humor. And so it allowed me to be, or, you know, I thought it would allow me to be sort of cartoony. The fans that have contacted me have suggested to me that maybe I went a little too cartoony, but you know, it was fun to do while I was doing it.
Yeah. You lived in New York for a while. What was it like being a comic artist living in New York in the 2000s? Because you hear a lot of stories about these guys that, you know, were working in the industry back in like the 60s and 70s and 80s. But what was it like being a comic artist in New York in like a modern era?
Oh, I loved it. Just the number of creators that are there it's, you know, we spend so much of our time in a room by ourselves that you don't really get to experience that camaraderie except for at shows. And so to live in a city where any time during any week, there'll be a get together at a bar, or you just run into each other, or, you know, you become friends with guys who do what you do, and you can go and hang out, and you're not talking about comics. I mean, you are, because we're giant nerds, but, you know, you just have normal relationships with people who know exactly what you're talking about.
Right.
I mean, I imagine it's probably the same thing in any profession or career, especially those that are a passion. You know, like you hear stories about baseball players who were great ball players, but as soon as they retire, they come back and they feel like outsiders because they're no longer playing.
Yeah.
You know, it was, I imagine it was kind of like that you're around people who know what it's like to, you know, put on your cleats and run out and toss the pea around.
See, I think that's interesting you say it that way, because a lot of people that I know that work in comics, you know, they started off as comic book fans that were like avid readers of comics, and then they start working in comics, and immediately they stop reading comics.
I don't know anybody who doesn't read comics anymore. I mean,
really?
Not to the extent that we used to. Like I've gotten sort of the stink eye from fans at shows when they're talking to me about, you know, things that I've worked on. And especially after you know, I said, I've never read a Deadpool comic other than the ones that I've drawn. And they sent me reference for what I had. And I read a couple of that. And when I've discussed that with fans, because they'll come up and they'll ask you all types of like Deadpool questions I don't know any of the answers to that because I just don't know the character. And I've had a couple of them sort of pout at me saying, oh, well, you expect the creators to care about what they're working on. And we do care about what we're working on. But other than like the characters that we have, like, Conan, or, for me personally, that you love because you loved him when you were a kid, I don't care about any of the characters, really. They're just a vehicle for telling stories.
Right.
That's what I'm in love with. And, much less so. And also as a creator, I think you're more drawn to creators, more so than their creations. But yeah, I don't know any comics creators who don't read some comics. We're maybe more selective in what we read.
Yeah. I find myself as I get older, I'm reading more older comics. Like I'm actually going back, I guess you could say, going back to the well and reading the stuff that I fell in love with like 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's not that I don't like the stuff that's out now, because I actually do still buy new comics, but
yeah,
I find that I kind of miss the good old days. And this is not in any way a commentary of me saying that I wish comics today were like comics 30 years ago. That's not what this is about.
Yeah.
But just I kind of go back and I read, like Doctor Doom's origin story from Annual 2 of Fantastic Four, and I'm like, God, this was so good.
Yeah. I do that to a certain extent, but I go back and read collections of old things that I've never read before.
Yeah.
Probably because of my age and the stuff that I got into, that sort of cemented my aesthetic. And, it's like whenever, if you've read about like child development and like involving like taste buds, when you're a kid, the food that you're fed when you're a kid sort of sets the baseline for your palate. And my palate is of that older stuff. And even the new people that I like, sort of, I can tell that they have an appreciation for old stuff.
Yeah.
And so I've gone back. I've like the treasury of British comics is a publisher that repackages a lot of stuff that I've never read it before, because we as Americans, we don't give a shit about European comics.
Right.
So I probably shouldn't swear, should I?
No, it's okay. You're right.
But Americans don't care about anything but America, really. And so these are the first times that I'm seeing a lot of these comics, and I love them, because they excite me in the same way that the stuff that I read growing up excites me, I guess, because their aesthetic is more rooted in a particular idea of what craftsmanship means.
Okay, so you're going to love this. Brian Tidwell in the chat says, are we not going to talk about the Robert Downey Jr. thing? At which point I said, can you clarify?
I've been told that I sound like Robert Downey Jr.
He said how much John sounds like him, as well as his speech patterns. I never thought about this before, so this is kind of catching me by surprise.
I did there was a radio show in Fort Worth, and I'm forgetting the guy's name, and it bugs me, but he used to do a show on the student radio. Dave DeGrand, the cartoonist, he was on it also. That's where I met Dave. And the first time that I did it, buddies of mine who just listened, had no connection to comics whatsoever. I got that from all of them at that time, that I sounded like Robert Downey Jr. And I'll take it. I'd rather look like Robert Downey Jr. But I'll take sound like Robert Downey Jr.
Okay. Let's see. David.
I've also heard that that sometimes, especially if back when I used to smoke weed, that I sounded a lot like the Dude. Cassidy calls me the Dude sometimes.
I can see that. Yeah.
I start peppering everything with man and all of that.
I got a drink here, man.
Yeah, I got a drink here, man.
Okay, David Dingman says, any comment on shrinkage? I really liked your work on that, but it seemed like Farrago had some troubles.
I don't know how much I can say about that.
Okay.
The guy who was involved in the financing of that was a lawyer, so I don't want to tempt fate because, you know, if this gets back to him, well, screw it. He stole money. We did a Kickstarter for it, and he wound up stealing money out of it, and that's why it took so long to get it out. Is the guy who wrote it, Rob Kutner, who's a funny guy. He wrote for the Conan O'Brien Show and the Daily Show. He had to go into his own pocket to pay for the rest of it to come out. And, you know, I actually offered to draw the last issue or so for free just to get it out because we had subscribers. Kickstarter subscribers who were waiting on their rewards. So yeah, it kind of went a little sour at the end. But yeah, it had troubles.
Yeah. There's a lot of that goes on.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because, you know, when somebody subscribes or gives money to a Kickstarter or just buys any comic book. I mean, I've had some bad experiences working in comic books, and I try to never talk about them publicly or, you know, it's certainly not at conventions to fans or whatever, because they don't care. They don't care that you didn't get paid very much, or that, you know, the person who's publishing it or writing it wound up screwing you in some way or disrespected you. They don't want to hear that. They just want to buy a comic book and, you know, and enjoy it. And if they enjoyed it, they certainly don't want you to piss on it.
Right.
So,
exactly. Let's see. We've got another question here. Or actually, I guess it's, oh yeah, here it is. Rocky Parsons. Sorry, I was going down further. Rocky Parsons says, what books or stories or creators stick in your mind as setting your palette early on? Kind of talked a little bit about that earlier, but you might have missed it. We were talking about Mad Magazine. But John, I'm going to let you answer what you want to say there.
It's sort of shifted over the years. I mean, there is that whole setting the palette, and Mad Magazine is definitely a part of it. But I kind of floundered for a lot of years, trying to figure out who I wanted to be, because I went through phases where, you know, obviously I was into Bernie Wrightson and Barry Windsor Smith and Jeff Jones and all that, and I sort of flirted with the idea of maybe I want to be sort of a more artsy fartsy Jeff Jones kind of guy. And it wasn't really until like you see that meme bouncing around every now and then where it talks about how Jack Kirby didn't create the Fantastic Four until he was like 44 years old. Mm-hmm. So to not sweat about, you know, not accomplishing what you think you should accomplish early in your life, because, you know, even though Jack certainly had a career, the stuff that he's most known for didn't happen until, you know, until he was in his 40s. And, you know, he created the Fantastic Four when he was 44, but the general consensus is it didn't really get great until like the 30s. So that puts him at what, 47? He's damn near 50 years old before he really hit that stride of, when we think about Jack Kirby, that's what we think of. So I didn't really kind of figure out what I wanted to do style-wise until I was in my early 30s. And I wound up, it was a book that wound up not happening, but I was drawing a one-shot for Wildstorm. I can't remember the character's name, but I think he was the big blue guy who was in Wildcats.
Yeah. Oh God, the name just slipped my mind. But yeah, I know who you're talking about.
You know who you're talking about, the blue shirt, the red cowl, and blonde hair, that guy. And it was sort of it was a story kind of based on an idea that I threw out there, and Joe Casey wrote it, and John Cassaday was going to ink it. And as I was working on that, I started getting more and more cartoony as I was going. And I've always loved like Bernie Wrightson and Will Eisner and Wally Wood and Plug. And I'm a huge Michael Golden nut. And that stuff started creeping more and more into it. And that's when I finally started feeling like this is how I'm supposed to draw. and I felt really comfortable and was as happy with my artwork as I had ever been up to that point.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, short answer long, the artists who had a big impact on me are Michael Golden. Is about as big an influence as I have. I love Will Eisner. I love Wally Wood, his Mad magazine, like his funny stuff. I love the science fiction and all of that, but the like Black and Blue Hawks and Blobs, and you know, the humorous stuff is what I really love. And Mike Plug was a big influence early on. And did I say Wrightson? Wrightson is a huge influence. Those were guys who early on, and John Severin. You know,
oh yeah,
you and I, back when we were doing the Monster Kids, one of the guys there, the bald guy with the Van Dyke, who was hitting on the young girls that one time.
Kurt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He said something bashing John Severin, and I said, "Oh man, John Severin is amazing. He's like Hal Foster, but with like a cartoonish bounce to it." And you went, "Yeah," and we kind of locked, and we had that simpatico nerd bro. Yeah. We appreciate John Severin moment. I mean, John Severin I love his stuff.
Well, that's the funny thing. Like you were talking earlier about Mad Magazine and Crack Magazine. When I was a kid, I didn't read comics as a kid, but I absorbed as much Mad and Crack Magazine as I could. So I fell in love with guys like John Severin and Jack Davis and Mort Drucker and all these guys because of those magazines. Yeah. And so when I realized that John Severin had done comic book work, and I started going back and looking at that, and it was this really interesting thing because I was so used to seeing his Crack Magazine stuff, which was very kind of silly and light and funny, but still very detailed and impressive. And then you go back and you look at like some of the war comics and stuff he did, and it was like, wow, I can't believe this style translates so well. Yeah. You know, and it's really kind of him doing the same thing, but somehow it just works.
Yeah. Well, the first Cracked Magazine stuff I saw of his was...
Hey, John, real quickly, can you possibly move your camera down just a hair?
Okay, yeah. How's that?
That's great. Perfect.
Okay. Yeah, the first non-Cracked Magazine stuff I saw of Severin's were the Cole issues that he did with his sister, Marie. Yeah. And that stuff just blew my mind. And it was that moment of... You know, because when you're a little kid, you read comics and you see the artist names, but it doesn't really dawn on you what's going on. And those comics were some of the first ones that I looked at them and I went, holy crap, a guy's doing these. And I recognized that name. Mm-hmm. And then, right after that followed the Mike Plug by this Axe I Rule. And then that was all she wrote, man.
Yeah. Also talking about Will Eisner, in case people aren't aware, you actually got to work a little bit on the Spirit with the Spirit Adventures.
Yeah, I drew in keeping with the theme, I drew the last issue of the Spirit Adventures.
But again, kind of a dream come true moment because you were such a fan of Eisner.
Oh yeah, and the fact that Will had to, I say it like I knew the guy, I didn't know the guy, but he had to approve of everybody who got to work on that book. And so, people can say whatever they want. You don't like my Deadpool? Tough shit. Will Eisner gave me the thumbs up. So, you can say whatever you want, jackass. And then my first work for DC, who hires me? Archie Goodwin. So, my first two big breaks from people who didn't know me from Adam were Will Eisner and Archie Goodman. So you got a problem with that? Go piss up a rope.
Exactly.
Yeah.
David Dingman agrees. He says Severin Cole was amazing. Love those.
Yeah.
Just really great stuff. Have you had, because I would imagine the Eisner is definitely up there, but have you had kind of a geek out moment when you meet one of these creators at a show? Like, is there someone that you've had a chance to kind of meet in person and you're kind of like, wow, this guy, like, just have like a real hero moment for you?
Yeah. Well, meeting Eisner was like that. I don't remember if it was one of Larry's last shows or one of your first ones, but Gene Colan was there.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never stammered so much as I stammered when I met Gene Colan. And then,
Yeah.
he was pretty quiet, but his wife was just one of the nicest people you ever meet in your life.
Yeah.
And she was a baseball fan, so we got to talk old New York baseball. And then one year in Charlotte, I got to, tell Mike Plug how much his work meant to me. So,
yeah.
And again, it may have been right about the same time when Joe Kubert was at one of the Dallas shows.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, and then one of the very first Larry shows that I ever went to, Mike Coluto was a guest. And
I remember that show. Yeah.
He was over, and Art Adams was at the same show. But I was, having grown up on the studio guys and loving all that. And Coluto, because he wasn't one of the hot artists, he didn't get much traffic that weekend. So I pretty much sat at his table the whole weekend and we talked art and comics, and he looked at my stuff and he pulled out his portfolio and showed me stuff that, like, he had done like a design for a Conan t-shirt at the time. And he pulled that and showed me the original art for that. He had not the originals, but the Xeroxes for the pencils of the Hitler's Astrologer shadow graphic novel. And I got to look at those. So that was, and then what was great, because I thought, I just, not knowing anything, left thinking, okay, that was a cool experience. And it was one of my first shows. So I thought, oh, that's what conventions are. And, but I'll who knows if I'll ever see him again or I got to meet Mike Coluto. That's the end of it. We're driving out of Dallas and we hear a honk, honk, honk. And we look over to the car next to us and it's Coluto waving to us. So that was an awesome geek out moment.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've been very fortunate, to be able to kind of rub elbows with some of these people and, celebrate them while at the same time playing in that sandbox. And it's really, it's great.
Yeah. So yeah, there have been plenty of geek out moments.
Yeah. I'm curious, like Mindy, your lovely wife, Mindy, who I love, she's great. And she's really fun because when she goes to the conventions with you, she's very sociable. Like she's the kind of person that, someone can come up and talk to her and she will engage them. Sometimes you don't see that. Sometimes when you see like the wife of a creator come to a show, they just sit there and they don't really want to talk to anybody. They're just waiting for it to be over. Yeah. And I've never gotten that sense from Mindy, which is one of the reasons I always love seeing her at shows. But how does she feel kind of about this world? Because obviously this is something that she's in a lot of ways disconnected with, even though she sees you every day. Like when you started to kind of bring her into this world, did she take to it immediately? Was it something that she, found to be comfortable?
Yeah, well, she was married before she and I got together, and she was married to another comic book artist. Mm-hmm. So she had already been kind of introduced to this world, and I don't want to go too much into it, but she has always been that face, that sort of, if I'm working on commissions and I can't talk to people, she'll talk to people, and I have my head down.
Right.
And she is a very personable, very sweet, nice person. So I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, she knows it. And it also helps that, yeah, of course she's going to get along with you. You're a sweet guy. She likes you. And we've met other artists who, while she doesn't have a whole lot of interest in comics beyond the fact that her husband makes them, a lot of comic nerds are nerds for other things. Well, she's a music nerd, and we've got a bunch of comic nerds who are nerd friends who are also music nerds. So she'll hang out and talk to them about that. And, it's said a lot, and it's really true, is there are a lot of really nice people in comics. Yeah. So even though she's not into comics, she can hang out and talk to him about other stuff. And honestly, a lot of times whenever we're at shows, when the show is over, we don't want to talk about comics anymore. We want to go out and have a drink and just talk shit.
Right.
And she's a great shit talker. And, we're friends with other comics creators who are great shit talkers. So we go out and we have a drink and we talk shit. You know?
Yeah. Well, I've always found her to be nothing but delightful, and I think you did good there.
Oh man, I'm punching so far above my weight class.
Well, it's just nice. It's nice to have somebody like that that's very supportive. It's kind of reminds me of like when you were saying just a few minutes ago, talking about Gene Colan and his wife Adrian, and she was, because Gene was such a quiet, sort of shy guy. I mean, he was very nice, but he was very also kind of shy and reserved.
Yeah.
And Adrian was absolutely not that. And in a weird way, it kind of seemed perfect when they went to shows together because she could be that voice that he didn't have.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, and it probably, having a good relationship is finding someone who's offsets your weaknesses with strengths.
Mm-hmm.
And, most nerds are nerds. We're not real social animals, and especially people who are wired to sit in a room by ourselves all day, making up stupid stories. It helps to have someone who can actually carry on a conversation.
Right.
And, you hear stories about, strangers would show up at Jack Kirby's house and Roz would go make sandwiches and, or, he would stay up all night drawing. Well, she raised the kids and probably ran the household.
Yeah.
So, it's, I found somebody who, compliments me, and I think I compliment her well also.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys are great together.
Yeah.
Well, we're getting kind of close to the end, but I did want to just make sure that people that are listening, and especially if they're watching this later, if they want to find you, what's the best place to look for you for? You've got a couple different social channels.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter as at himwhatjolts, HIMWHATJOLTS, himwhatjolts. I'm on Instagram as Joltin Johnny Lucas, and on Facebook I have a not at all douchey artist page called John Joltin Johnny Lucas.
There you go.
So
yeah,
you can find me there.
Where did Joltin Johnny Lucas come from?
Well, as being a big fan of Silver Age Marvel comics, I just always loved Gentleman Gene Colan, Jack King Kirby, and I think was Joe Sennett, Joltin Joe Sennett.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
And, I love Joe Sennett, and it started out as just a joke.
Yeah.
From friends. And what's funny is I was a kid who grew up, my name is John. It's on my birth certificate. If you called me Johnny, I was going to fight you. And here in my 20s, I still, people call me Johnny all the time now. So I'm just sort of like numb to it. But I played this great trick on myself. I didn't like being called Johnny. So what did I do? I started referring to myself as Joltin Johnny as a joke. And now people know me as Johnny and call me Johnny all the time. So it's just, I'm a masochist, I guess.
You did it to yourself.
Yeah, but it started out as sort of a joking tribute to Silver Age Marvel comics, because those to me are one of the high water marks,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, when you think about it, those days of the bullpen and kind of the personalities. Stan made everyone a personality, and that's kind of gone now. Like, it's unfortunate, but it's sort of gone. And I guess it's because there really is no bullpen anymore. I mean,
no, Ramita's Raiders are gone. I mean, Scummy was the last of them, and when he let go, it was there's no more Ramita's Raiders.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
Well, this has been a lot of fun, John. I've been enjoying, first of all, I've been enjoying catching up with you because we haven't talked in a while, and it's fun watching you work and getting to do something that you really love, and I get the sense that, for you, you talked earlier about how, it was kind of just a job sort of thing, but I also get the sense that there is a lot of love coming out of you for this.
Oh yeah. I mean, I love what I do. I mean, I don't always love what I do, but I love comics. I love telling stories and drawing pictures, and just I get to sit in my underwear all day, and
Thank God the
and
camera is
whatever,
positioned.
and
The
draw
camera's
stupid
positioned where.
pictures.
Thank God the camera's
I will
positioned where it
never
is.
be rich, but I still feel like I won, because if someone, if you could do anything in your spare time, what would it be? It would be sitting in a room drawing stupid pictures. And I make something resembling a living doing just that at 52 years old. So, what's to be unhappy about?
Yeah. I can't tell if it's just me, because I can still hear you fine.
Yeah.
But I think we might have froze on you. Let me...
my low battery thing just came on.
Oh, did it? Okay.
Yeah. And I also just got a text from someone.
Okay.
So
maybe if you hit cancel on that, it'll come back in. Yeah, it says you're frozen.
Okay. How about now?
No, still frozen.
Okay. Well, I guess.
Well, you know what? We're almost done, so maybe the timing of this is okay. We'll just kind of talk about a few things kind of on the way out. But again, just to remind people, if you want to catch John online, he has a great Instagram page. He has he's available. If you want to hit him up for a commission, please do so. You've still got some originals for sale. And I highly recommend that everybody should have a piece by John Lucas in their collection.
Sure. Hey, go join my Patreon.
Yeah, exactly. Now, is the Patreon Joltin Johnny Lucas as well?
I believe so.
Okay.
If you go to my Twitter or my Facebook or my Instagram, at some point I'll be hawking that crap. So
okay,
go join my Twitter and you'll hear about it soon enough.
Absolutely. And whenever we start doing shows again, I know that speaking for myself and Dallas Comic Show, we will absolutely be having you back.
I would love to be down there. And, next spring, this book that I can't talk about, it should be out in the spring.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to be out promoting the crap out of it. And, I've got some other things coming out between them.
Hey, you're back.
Am I back? Okay.
Yeah, you're back.
I plugged it in. So you can see my closet with my 9,000 t-shirts. And there's my Gene Colan Third Eye poster that I got him to sign at that show.
Yeah.
And my spinner racks. So,
where did you get the spinner rack from?
The first one I got, do you know the Bankstons who own Austin Books and Bankston's Books?
Oh, yeah, Brad. Yeah.
I went to high school with those guys, and I helped them move into their first store in Waco, and they gave me the first one. The second one I bought a few years ago at a resale shop in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Yeah.
Got it for $90.
And a nice set of EC archives there behind you, too.
Yeah, most of those, yeah. Most of those.
Those are great books.
Yeah.
By the way, David Dingman says, come to the Northeast New England. So, John.
I want to. I really want to. I mean, I miss New York every day. We'll never move back there, but I do. Once the new book comes out, I'm going to try and range far and wide to promote it. Another thing I wanted to tell you about that I have coming out is we were talking about earlier about different milestones that you go, ooh, this is cool. I don't know if you've seen, but Last Gas Comics is putting out, I believe, a 50th anniversary issue of Slow Death. Mm-hmm. And I wrote and drew a short for that. So that is officially my first professional writing job. And I'm also a huge fan of the Undergrounds. And so I'm going to be in an issue of Slow Death with a new Richard Corbin story. And they found an old unpublished Greg Irons story.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so there's going to be a lot of cool stuff. It's a big, oversized thing, and I wrote and drew a short for it. So look for that.
Real quickly before we let you go, can you hold up the piece just so people can see your finished inks on that piece?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Because it's pointing towards the light. Can you see it?
Yeah, hang on. I'm going to make you full screen. Hang on 1 second. Solo layout. Okay, there we go. There we go. Look at that. Burroughs art, baby. That's great.
Yeah. There you go. Maybe
Thanks,
I should have just done a sketch. I don't know.
No, it's good. It's great. It's great seeing the process. And so, yeah, that's terrific, man. Thank you so much. And
thank you. It was fun talking, hanging out.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have to do this again. This is the second time they've done Comic Art Live. I think it's going to probably become a twice a year thing. So yeah, I'll keep you posted on it. But I appreciate you being here today.
Oh man, thanks for asking.
Absolutely. Give my love to Mindy, and we will talk soon.
I'll give a big hug for you.
All right, buddy. It's good to see you.
You too, bud.
Take care.
Bye.
And that was John Lucas, ladies and gentlemen. Again, if you would like to find out more information about him, please visit Twitter or Facebook or Instagram and look for Joltin Johnny Lucas or Him What Jolts. And you can find out more from him. And if you want to hit him up for a commission, piece of original art, whatever you guys feel like. I just want to say we're going to have Bill from Comic Art Fans back on here in just a minute. I think he should be dialed in any minute now. But while we're waiting for that, I just want to say a huge thank you to everybody who has joined us for Comic Art Live. I think this has been just as much fun as the last time we did it. So thank you. And we will see you guys on the next one. Stay tuned for Bill. He's coming up next. And he's going to be kind of saying his thanks and everything as well. But my thanks to all of you. My thanks to John Lucas. I hope everybody has enjoyed this weekend. Stay tuned. We're going to say goodbye officially. And then we'll tell you about what you can expect next from comicartfans.com. And thanks to all of you in the chat as well. We appreciate you guys joining us. And if I missed any questions or anything from anybody, I apologize. But we'll catch you guys on comicartfans.com regardless. So, yeah, we'll see you there. Everybody take care. Stay tuned. Bill's coming up.